So this week we're talking about how do we stay on top of the trends so that we can make sure that we're delivering the education we need to our students. And I think part of being a counseling educator is like we all do it in the break room. We're like, oh, the students, they're not willing to listen, or the students, they have their laptops on, and it's part of what we do, right? And students are constantly changing, and like there needs to be an acceptance of that, and we need to change with it. So my question for all of you is like, how has things changed over time, and how do you make sure that you kind of change with it?
Yeah. I feel like I can start us off, that's okay. Okay. I feel like there's so much about that, kids these days, kind of ethos that we really have to, like, what is it that we can embrace about the students of today? And so I think really coming from that strengths-based perspective, and I remember it was probably a couple of years ago already, going to a conference talk about Gen Z students, and it was so well attended, and people had so many questions about it, because it feels like students are changing and shifting, and they are. And so how do we continue to respond to that? And so one of the ways that I think starting out with is being able to see, like, what are the strengths that maybe a different generation of students brings, or a different kind of cohort of students, and like the gifts that they will be bringing into the profession, and kind of starting there, but then also being able to stay up to date with kind of the things that are important to our students, and then ultimately I think will also be important to our clients. So yeah, I think starting from that strengths place and then being able to build from there is one area I think maybe to start with.
Yeah, I think what's coming up for me is adaptation. How do we adapt and not remain rigid to the old ways of teaching? How do we adapt in order to help students to engage and at the same time learn in the classroom? Also, going back to that funnel, not bringing everything out there into the classroom. Talking about the technology piece, I've made the decision in my class that no technology. Any gadget you're going to use has to be without a Wi-Fi, and that has to be a note taker. And that's because some semesters ago, I had students in class, and they didn't know that I was working. I love to walk around in my class. They didn't know I was walking around, and I saw them watching something else. So, and since then, I made that decision that no, in this class, you take note, pen and paper, going back to the old ways, because it helps you to retain what you learn rather than distracting the other students in the class. So even though I'm adapting, but I'm still keeping some of those old traditional way of teaching that helped. So
I think what I do is like think about like on an airplane there's turbulence, right? And they got to put on your seatbelt. But if there's no turbulence, you can take off your seatbelt, right? I think for me, like, okay, I'm thinking which one is what, which one's the seatbelt and which one isn't. But like, I will try to talk about the purpose. I'll say, y'all, for about 20 minutes, I want us to really get into our experience. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? So laptops down, tables back, right? And then I'll say, okay, you can go back to bringing up the technology, But one thing I do is I try to get like very purposeful and like why I'm having them turn it off. The other thing, just for me, this might be a shock, but like I used to do my courses in a very Socratic way, like discussion based, and I still do. But one thing my teaching evals kind of stated is like we do want some didactic lecture from you. So now I do a little bit of some didactic lecture, then into like, okay, how do you apply it? And that's been going like really well. And I think that's where, our students are going to have to learn through the experience. But as they start to teach, they probably will be like, okay, I'm going to go straight lecture. They're going to get critiqued. They're going to go straight discussion. They're going to get critiqued. They're going to do flipped classroom. Oh, yeah, I got to complain about that my first time.
Yeah.
You get
I got one and they said, oh, she talks too much. There's no video. Okay. So now we have videos that we watch. We have videos that we watch in class and we process the video together, and that helps. This discussion that we do in class, also in class discussion, case studies, live case studies that I bring into the class for the student to process and know that, okay, this is a way and also I bring in speakers into the class so that it helps bridge the gap between the classroom and the field. So students get that experience knowing that, okay, there's the part for the classroom and there's a part for the field. Because I always tell students, sometimes when you're in the front of when your client is sitting beside you there, you won't remember what you were taught in your ethics class. You won't remember what you were taught in your theory class because you're working with another human in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I have always saw that there is certainly a component of making sure that we give them enough information, and presumably at some point they're going to be taking an exam, and I think there's also a piece that I call a Vegas piece, that we also have to be somewhat entertaining. Videos, I don't show long videos, but I do like to have them throughout the film. But one thing that I think that really I've loved about Regis over the years is the notion that we actually have our students do a lot of self-reflection. And there's nothing like going into a practicum or even into practice or internship where they've actually had an opportunity to write as much as they can about their own internal sort of rumblings, if you will. And I think the other part really is just what you folks are talking about, the educational piece. I don't know how people feel about ChatGPT, but ChatGPT, yes. But I think it can also, there's an opportunity for more self-directed education. For example, writing a case study. And I've done some of these, and I add all these little pieces to it, and I add little nuances to it, and it actually can create, not perfect, but create some pretty good case studies that can address a lot of different things, rather than pulling them out of a book, and sometimes people may not even find them relevant. Mm-hmm. And then they can actually write them. They can be more involved in terms of, I guess you'd call it self-directed sort of educational pieces. So, yeah, I think it's changing.
It is. Yeah. And I think we got to change with it. I think we got to change with it. And we need to think about, okay, if we're getting new things, and how do we teach students so that it helps clients, we got to change with it. Mm-hmm. I just want to highlight, though, based upon the self-reflection thing, I think that is what's really cool about being at Regis and a Jesuit school, is like the Ignatian paradigm, which has to do with, it's like based in like how do we learn. And I think we learn not by just I think we learn by having an experience, but then we have to take time and put meaning to the experience. So like they're, watching us talk right now, but unless they actually like spend time on their own thinking about like, okay, what am I learning? What am I taking away? How do I apply this? Then it's going to go in one ear and out the other. And I do drive my students nuts because like every 20 minutes in class, I'll be like, pause. What are you learning? Blink stares, right? And you're like, okay, like you have to be active in it.
Yeah.
You have to be active in it, y'all. Like, and I have to inspire them to be active in it. But if they're just a passenger, they're not gonna learn. They have to be actively in it.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of like, that makes me think of kind of the transformational learning theory kind of model, and how like preflection, let's think about it beforehand, let's reflect on it, let's have critical dialogue about it. Like all of these components are necessary in order for a transformational experience to happen. And that it can't be, there's so much information that you can have access to as a student, as a human, like you can just go access all kinds of things. And that's not necessarily going to settle into your bones, into your system. There's something else that needs to happen. And as educators, it feels like that's the things that that we need to help to facilitate, and like giving options and that sort of thing. One of the pieces of feedback that I gave to most practicum students was to take risks. And now that we're having this conversation, I'm kind of feeling some directing back at me as far as like as an educator, like taking risks and trying things out, experimenting with different ways of, you know, how do we use ChatGPT and use it in a critical way, or how do we challenge students to turn off their devices or whatever it is, but like taking those risks.
And Dr. Wimmer, if you're in my class, I'd say it sounds like you really want to take risks. How are you taking risks right here, right now in this class?
Yeah, this is why I shouldn't have said.
Okay. but in all seriousness, right? Like, this is why I'm not that concerned right now for AI taking over our jobs, because like I think it will help us with information and learning, but we as humans are still craving connection and applying it. And that's why education, to me, is moving in that direction, you know? So anyway, great dialogue, everyone. Always fun talking with such great teachers and educators.
Thank you.
Thank you.